afternoon. Wow. To the rest of you, good afternoon. How many of you, out of curiosity, other than yesterday, have never seen me present in person before? Okay. That would be like all of you. Wow. Travel the world, think you're famous, show up here. Not so much. Anyway. Today has a unique significance for me. Most of you, by the time we're complete, hopefully this will be more appropriate, I suppose, but I want to begin this morning or this afternoon by just acknowledging my wife, September, who's sitting right over here, came down with me today. It was 33 years ago today that I asked her to be my wife. So, stand up. She's going to kill me later for that, I know. Most of you, I would imagine, don't know anything about how I ended up here today. So I want to take you back and share with you a little bit of the story. Not so I can hear it again. I want to give you this information for the benefit that what we're about to talk about, this artist training system, is something we want to make sure receives from you more than the usual attention. I would imagine you've got something to write with and something to write on, and I would like to ask for you to take good notes. Because this information, I can promise you, over time, can make for some of you an extra $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year. For some of you, this information will make for you an extra $200,000, $300,000, or $400,000 a year. I'm telling you. And for some of you, this information is literally worth millions to you, to your family, and to the people that you care about. We're going to talk about the system, but before we get there, there's a story that needs to be retold one more time. 26 years ago, being married, 2 children, working in corporate America, a coworker with arm extended, audio cassette tape in hand, gave me a tape with these simple words. Here, I'd like it back when you're finished. Now, that particular recording, I plugged into the cassette tape player of my automobile, listened to it back and forth to my office and home, repetitively. I couldn't stop listening to the material. I was so fascinated with the content on this particular recording. It was by a man who'd been voted among his peers as the #1 financial planner in America. And he began talking to me, even though I knew from the audience that I could hear in the background this had been recorded sometime previous. It felt like he was talking directly to me. That message began with the following information. If you lost your job and couldn't work for the next 90 days, would they repossess your television set? And I remember hearing that for the very first time thinking, who finances a television set? That didn't make any sense. I mean, I didn't have a lot of money back then, but financing a television set, seriously? This guy voted the #1 financial planner of among his peers for that particular year was talking about financing a television set? But he continued by saying, if you lost your job for 90 days and they came and repossessed your television set, you were broke. And then he continued. What if you lost your job and couldn't find another one for 6 months? Would they repossess your car? And I thought, well, 6 months. I mean, come on, 6 months, that's a long time, 6 months. I had a company car at that moment in my career. I wasn't too concerned about them taking it away, unless, of course, I lost my job. Then it would be gone immediately. I wouldn't need to worry about 6 months. But he said, if you couldn't work 6 months, lost your job, you were broke. But here's where he got me. This is when I started to pay attention. He said, but what if you couldn't find work? And that continued for 1 entire year. Would they take away your home? Would you be out in the street looking for some other place to live if you couldn't work for a year? And I thought, no, wait a minute, come on. Who has that kind of money sitting around? A year? Seriously? An entire year? Take away your home a year? No one has that kind of coin, currency, capital just laying around, do they? But he continued with the same words. If you lost your home after a year, you were broke. He got me. I recognized I might have looked good back then, I might have smelled good, but I was broke. So after listening to that cassette tape recording 2, 3, 4, 5 times, I lost track. My coworker invited me to the classic business opportunity presentation. Any of you ever been to a business opportunity presentation? I never had. I didn't know you were supposed to run, say no, ask what it was all about. He asked, would you like to come? I said, certainly. Came, 2, 3, 4,000 people in the audience. People on the stage seemed reasonable. Presentation made sense to me logically. I got it. And sitting there in that audience over 26 years ago, I walked out of that room thinking, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I've got the time to do this. And you know what? I don't think I would really mind doing this with my family, my friends, and my coworkers. I got involved in network marketing. Now, here's the interesting part of the story. I came home, highest level of anticipation and excitement about our new future, lowest level of skill, knowledge, and information I probably would ever possess, and made my first information to my wife. Apparently, she'd attended another convention or another event because she wanted nothing to do with that. We're not selling our friends. I'm not getting involved. You're going to put what in our garage? I don't think so. I mean, I probably am embellishing the dialogue just a bit, but you get the idea. It didn't go over well. But I couldn't get that conversation from that audio tape out of my mind. Lost your television in 90 days, you're broke. Lost your car in 6 months, you're broke. Lost your home in a year, you're broke. And I knew I was broke. I couldn't just go in and ask for more money. That was not an acceptable solution. So I did the only thing I could think to do at the time. I continued looking, and if you seek, you will find. And I kept looking. I would bring this company home, this product home, this group home, these ideas home. What do you think about this? We'd have these conversations. None of them ever really went well. I dabbled a little bit, sometimes kind of behind her back. And then eventually, one day, there it was. A company that seemed a perfect fit for us. We got involved, started working it together for the very first time. She was excited about the product, I was excited about the business, and I'm telling you something, for the very first time I had someone willing to teach me. We went out and started doing the conversations, presentations, associations, and getting people involved in the business. It wasn't about 6 months we were making enough money to take care of the car, a little over a year, enough money for the mortgage and the automobile. And yet, you know, the funny thing is, looking back all those years ago, I remember still talking to people, making presentations. You're earning enough money, car, home, taken care of, business is growing, you can see the future's getting brighter and brighter as you're moving ever closer towards it, and yet you'd sit down with individuals, you'd give them a presentation, at the end of the conversation they would say, that'll never work. You lost your mind? I'm telling you, that's got to be illegal. I mean, you'd hear all of these crazy things, and then they get back in their car, two-tone, you know, blue on the top, rust on the bottom, not paid for yet, go back to the little office, the job they hated, couldn't afford to live there, they'd go back, we'd jump back in the automobile, go back to our home with our family. And I thought, why? What happened? What could I have said? What should I have said? Was it me? Was it them? You know, I was struggling trying to figure out, how do you present this business in such a way that when people hear it, they would say, I get it. I like it. I think I can do that. I mean, I saw it. Why didn't they see it? But the journey continued. You know, back in the day, it's unlike today. As soon as we take a break, you can go out there and you can pick up little CDs, little booklet, artist training system, start learning how to do it. Back in the day when I got started 26 years ago, it was rare to find information. I was so puzzled by that I ended up writing the very first book on the subject of network marketing and why, according to the subtitle, it may very well be your best career move, that went into bookstores and libraries. That book caught the attention of a man named John Milton Fogg. Some of you might remember the name, although I wouldn't expect you to. John had founded a magazine called Upline. Upline, back in its day, was the premier journal for the network marketing professional. If you were making any amount of money in this industry and wanted to understand it and get better at it so that you could devote more time to it to create the life and lifestyle for your family you'd always wanted, you were probably a subscriber of Upline Journal. John asked me to take over for him as the editor-in-chief, and that's when everything changed. Let me ask you a question. You ever been in a situation in your life where you thought, I've got this thing figured out? I mean, I got it figured out. Not hard, not hard. And then something comes along, twists you in such a manner you realize, man, I didn't have a clue. Looking back, didn't even begin to understand it. I came in there thinking I was absolutely on top of the world. Just took over, editor-in-chief, Upline Journal. Here we are, going to talk to some of the biggest and brightest the profession currently had at the time. Because my position, my reason for being there was to look for content for the magazine. Talk to those people making on the low side $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month. Low side. High side, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a month and more. Interview them, find out what they were doing, get the stories, publish it in the pages of Upline Journal for our readers, for the benefit of our subscribers, and for the increased circulation of the magazine. We talked to people all over the world. John had an incredible Rolodex. And yet as I began having these conversations with these different individuals from around the world, it began to dawn on me what I thought I understood about network marketing, I didn't have a clue. You know, you're talking to someone who's making $250,000 a month, and they're not that bright. And you're thinking, I mean, I don't get it. How did these people get to this level? I mean, they couldn't even articulate a sentence. I mean, they couldn't write anything. They didn't even smell good. You know, and they're the $250,000 a month income earner. You know, it's just, in America, how is that possible? Some of these individuals, no education of any kind. Some of these individuals, backgrounds that were less than attractive. Some of these people, they were in health and nutrition companies. They looked like they were a poster child for death. There they were, and they're making all this, I didn't get it. But conversation after conversation, article after article that appeared in the journal over time, it began to click. And all of a sudden, there it was. The formula, the recipe. There was just this absolutely predictable point, this philosophy that began to emerge, where when you started having these conversations and asked the questions, you could almost determine what they were going to say before the words came out of their mouths. All sounded the same to me. It didn't matter the company, didn't matter the culture, didn't matter the community, didn't matter where they'd been, didn't matter their compensation. It didn't matter. When you started asking them all of these questions, they started to sound the same. And it began to hit me. This is a lot like a recipe. You know, if you know anything about being in a kitchen, anything about cooking, anything of all, you know that you're probably going to need to understand the incredible egg, because it's going to show up all the time. You know, you're making bread, you need an egg. You're making a cake, you need an egg. You're having eggs, obviously, you're going to need an egg. Or 2 or 3. Waffles, eggs, pancakes, eggs, cookies, eggs. I mean, you're going to need an egg. It's just, if you're in the kitchen, you're going to need to figure out what to do with an egg. And if you're having these conversations, all of a sudden, there were these little points that started to sound like, that's an egg. Comes up all the time, all the time, all the time. I got so excited about this little philosophy, I wanted to find out if it would work. And so instead of spending the rest of my career there at Upline Magazine trying to find out if the sentence should end at a period, colon, semicolon, be deleted altogether, did anyone really care? Knowing what these people were earning, knowing what was possible, I stepped down and started ID number 637, 637th distributor in a new startup company out of Dallas, Texas. I wanted to find out if this little philosophy would actually work for me.